Hello everyone. So I wanted to welcome you to my studio, aka my bedroom, and I am excited about today's topic, and that is going to be on budgeting for groceries and how to save money while you're shopping for the groceries, while you're prepping your meal plans, and then some ways that you can save also just in your kitchen. So let's get started. First up, I want to say thank you for coming and watching this video. It's probably going to end up being 2 parts most likely because I have a lot to cover. And I wanted to first of all share kind of my journey, if you will, in learning how to save my family money, specifically in the area of food. So we've always been pretty much a one-income family. I have done things on the side to bring in a little bit extra, everything from, babysitting others' kids at my house, or I've been online teaching for about a year. I did online teaching. I've just had a variety of ways that I've tried to bring in income here and there, but my main calling has been to be a stay-at-home parent and to be able to take care of my kids 24/7, to be able to be a homemaker, take care of my home, and to make sure that I'm able to train my kids for the Lord. Not that you can't train your kids for the Lord if you work outside the home, but I felt personally that I was called to stay home with them so that I can just immerse myself in motherhood. And so, being that that's what I felt personally called to do, then I wanted to be able to do my best in that job. And there's been different times that, I've thought like, what if I worked part-time somewhere, or what if I created like a at-home business? And at different points, those things have been helpful and they have been great supplement to our family. But almost every time for me personally, it was God telling me, I don't mind if you do this, because the Proverbs 31 woman, she, did extra jobs and stuff like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, God was telling me, your main focus right now needs to be on your family, because I have such little kids and they're very time consuming. And so a few years back, probably, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years into our marriage, probably about 3 years or so, then I decided to make it my job to save our family's money and to be as resourceful as possible, to be the best steward that I could with the money that my husband was bringing in from his regular work. So that became my job. My job here wasn't to go out and make money. My job was to be the best steward as I could of the money that he was bringing in for us. So that kind of started me on this journey of learning all these bazillions of tips that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in a little bit. And thankfully, growing up, I grew up with very frugal parents who taught me a lot of ways and to save money. And my mom, obviously food and providing meals was a huge job of hers. There was 6 kids in my family, and they were also a one-income family. So I learned from my mom some ways to be frugal in the kitchen and with your shopping. But I needed more. I needed more than just the few tips that I remember learning from her. And so I started studying. And I would look up things online. I think I read a few different books on the subject. You can look all over Pinterest, watch YouTube videos. I just immersed myself in trying to figure out ways that I could incorporate into saving my family some extra money in food areas as well as other different categories. So that's kind of my starting point. And I have over the years, over the next 4 or 5 years after that, have kind of perfected it, learned what works for me and what doesn't work, And so I kind of have my own like mojo and system and things that I do personally in the area of food and grocery shopping. So right now I'm going to share some of those tips in a little bit with you guys. I have a couple other things that I want to bring up before I start talking about the actual nitty-gritty tips and ideas. And my first thing that I want to say is I want to ask you a question that I want you to ask yourself. Okay, so the question I'm going to ask you is, why do you want to save money on groceries? There's a lot of different reasons that people would want to save, and you need to know your why. For some people, like for me, it was we're a one income family, so there's only one stream of money coming in to take care of our growing family. For some people, maybe you have just a lower income in general, even if it's just yourself or just you and your spouse, even if you're both working outside the home. So you just need to be able to have a lower grocery budget because you don't have a large amount of money coming in. Other reasons is why you might want to save money on groceries is you know that you spend too much because XYZ. Maybe it's because you have a lot of food waste. Like you throw away food all the time. It goes bad because you're buying too much of it. It can be you want to save money towards another purchase. So having a lower food budget means that you could put that money towards a home project, a renovation, a family vacation, a vehicle, like a ton of different things. Maybe you're having another baby and you know that you need to have some money set aside for medical expenses or just baby supplies in general. There's a ton of different reasons that people might want to save. And you just need to decide what yours is and go from there. All right, number 3 is, I guess I don't really need to tell you number 3 because that's what I have written down in my notes, but I never said 1, 2, 3. So anyways, number 3 for me is that many factors play into how much you spend for food. So those things are, sorry, I sound like really breathless, but sorry about that. That happens when you're pregnant and you just gotten over COVID. So many different factors play into how much you're going to spend. One of them is diet preferences. So if you are someone that having a very clean diet where you're buying like pretty much all organic, you are maybe you're a vegan and you're buying like some specialty items, or you want to be able to buy all natural, grass-fed, free range meat, stuff like that, then I mean your grocery budget is just going to be higher. So food allergies and sensitivities is another big one. Someone who has a gluten allergy might spend a different amount than someone who doesn't. Like for my family, thankfully, we don't really have any major food sensitivities or allergies. We have a couple minor sensitivities that we try not to overdo it. Like for our family, it's dairy, but we still eat it, just not in large quantities. But we don't have anything major. Like we don't have people that like absolutely cannot have gluten or absolutely can't have whatever it may be. And so that it means that we can just buy regular bread at the store that costs like $1.50, and we're not having to buy like the specialty gluten-free bread or the specialty gluten-free flour that costs like 3 or 4 times the amount of regular, or can cost up to that much more. The number of people in your household obviously is going to determine how much you spend. A bachelor is going to spend much less than like us as a family of 6. Yeah, we're 6. Let's see. Ages of people in the household. So a family like us, where we have mainly little kids, even though we have a lot of people, we mainly have little kids. they got a big appetite. I mean, our kids, they definitely eat way more than most kids that I have seen their ages or even a little bit older. We've gone to people's houses before, and our kids eat like 3 times the amount of other children. And so that affects our grocery budget. But their ages also make a big difference. And so if you have all little kids in your household, most of the time you're going to end up be spending less than someone who has like 3 or so teenagers in their house. Location and cost of living is another factor you have to think about. Thankfully, we live in a lower cost of living area of the country. But if you live somewhere else, like maybe out on the West Coast, your cost of living is going to be a lot more. So I say all that to help you guys think that there's not just one number that you could just throw out there and say, this is how much you should be spending for your family. Because everyone is different and everyone has unique needs. So these are just some things to be thinking about as you are trying to determine what your grocery budget should be. And maybe you have it, you have exactly budgeted what you usually spend. And that's great, because some people don't have a budget at all. And they have to start back at step number 1. And that is just create that budget. But let's say you have a budget in place and you feel like it's too high. Or you're going to someone online or on YouTube and you're like, I wish they would just tell me how much they spend. And some people do. Some people tell you numbers. I'm not going to tell you numbers of what we spend because of all of these different factors that play into what your budget's going to be. Our budget is going to look different than a single college age student who lives in California and eats all organic. It's just going to be different. And I do want to say also that as I'm giving these tips and ideas and stuff like that our family eats what I consider a whole foods diet. Not a Whole Foods the grocery store, because there's no way we could afford that. But a whole food diet. And that affects some of the tips I'm going to give you later on. And it means that the things that I buy are going to look a little different than someone who maybe just doesn't care. And that like diet or things like that, food preferences aren't like a big deal to them. They just want to eat, and that's fine too. But for our family, we eat a whole foods diet, and so that looks like, when I say that, it looks like things that are typically single ingredient items that I buy and make from scratch. So you're talking like fruits and veggies, that literally all that's in them is fruits and veggies. Whether that is a canned item or frozen or fresh. We buy grains that's just that grain or just that flour. Or we buy sweeteners where it's just honey, or it's just like I use coconut sugar. We don't really buy many things that are already made together. There are a few convenience items that I do buy that's already made together. For example, ketchup. I don't make my own ketchup. I admire people who do, but I don't. But I am careful when I do buy things that are packaged and already together, is I'm looking at the ingredients and I'm seeing, all right, how many of these ingredients do I consider to be healthy or single ingredient items? How many preservatives are in them? And obviously we splurge and we do eat things that are not healthy. You'll almost always find like a frozen pizza or something like that in our freezer, because everyone knows there's just days that it's been busy and you get home at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and you don't want to make food. And if you hadn't prepared ahead of time, you want to be able to throw something in quickly. That doesn't happen. It should not happen regularly. But there are those convenience items that we of course buy and enjoy. And you're always going to see cereal in our cabinet. Not because we eat it every single day for breakfast, but we do eat it once, sometimes twice a week, for pure convenience sake, like on Sunday mornings when we're going to church. So I say all that leading up to my next thing of all the different factors that play into what your budget is going to look like. It's going to be different than mine. And the next point is the question of, well, how much should I spend on groceries? Of setting a budget. Thinking about all the factors, there are a few different ways that you can go about picking what your budget should be, and if you are spending too much for what you do have budgeted. And that is, there are some online guidelines that you can look up. I believe it is from the USDA, that every year they put out guidelines for what, depending on your family size, what you should be spending. I have looked at that before, and I think it can be helpful for many people, but for personally, the guidelines that they set up are way, way higher than what we spend at all. I can't imagine spending that much on groceries in like a month period of time. So that could be something that you want to look up, and it might be helpful for you. Another thing is kind of like a way to challenge yourself. You're like, okay, I have this amount of money that I have budgeted, and I'm not sure, I think it might be too much. Well, then challenge yourself. Set an amount and say, this week when I go grocery shopping, instead of spending, let's say, $100 per week, I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to spend $75 this week. And I'm going to do that for like a whole month. And see, at the end of that, evaluate how much leftover food do we have? What are we throwing away? Are we throwing away a bunch of food? Is a lot of the stuff that I'm buying packaged snacky type food that always costs way much more? Look at that and help it determine what your budget should be. And $75 was like, it kind of hit that sweet spot where you weren't having tons of food that you were dumping out, but you were also having enough to make it through the week. Then that might be your new budget. And $75 might be your new budget for the week. If you don't know how much you spend, you've never set a budget for grocery shopping, then save all of your receipts for a whole month. Anytime you go grocery shopping. Even if you're just running into Dollar General and picking up a gallon of milk. Save those, and at the end of the month, tally it up. And that should give you kind of a general idea of what you are spending in a month for food. Okay, we are ready for all of the tips. It's gonna be the best part. So I actually have like 24 different tips. So we're gonna see how this goes. I'm probably most likely going to do like half of them now and half of them in a second video, because I personally do not like watching very long videos. I would rather have them sectioned off that I can watch a little at a time. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go and see how far I get, and hopefully I'll get maybe about halfway through, and then you can wait till next week for the rest. Alright, so here we go. With these tips, I want you to keep in mind that these are things that I have done, maybe not all the time, but they're things that I have done at different points that have worked, and that I do currently use at least mostly regularly. But like I said earlier, depending on your food preferences or your any specialty diets that you have to be on or choose to be on, then some of these things might not apply to you. Or maybe they don't apply to you because you're just a college student and you're super busy. You're like never in your dorm or your apartment or anything like that. And so you're gonna be like, I'm not gonna be like buying things in bulk because I don't even have room to store it. And that's fine. So with all these tips, I want you to keep in mind that some will apply to you and some won't. But I would hope that you be able to take at least some of these tips and try them, apply them. If they work, great, keep them. If they don't, check them out and find a new one to try. So, take what you can use, learn something new, and ditch the rest. Not gonna hurt my feelings. Alright, so tip number 1 is to simplify your regular menu. Now, I say regular menu because I think there is definitely a lot of fun, and there is a time and a place for more extravagant food and menu items, especially holidays, special occasions, even just the weekends. Like, it's fine to do that with your meals that take more prep time, they take more ingredients, they take more specialty ingredients. But for your regular menu that you are eating the majority of the time, simplify it. We have a fairly simple menu. That doesn't mean that we have the same things over and over and over again. Some people do that. Like, they have like 7 meals that they make and they just rotate that every single week. That would be boring to me and to my family. They wouldn't like that. And so, but when I say simplify, I mean, like, what are the ingredients that are going into the foods that you're making? A lot of our foods revolve around the same kind of items for the most part. They're in different forms. They have different proponents to it. They have different seasonings. They have maybe a different meat or maybe a different side dish that goes with it. But for the most part, there's a lot of repetitive ingredients in that. That can very much help your budget because it means you're actually buying less items overall. And also simplifying your menu can help with, it helps with food waste, for one, because, you know, who hasn't gone to the store and bought this can of whatever it is because you had a recipe for it, and then you either, one, never made the recipe, and so it's been sitting in the back of your cupboard for like 2 years going to waste, money wasted there, or the recipe called for like 2 tablespoons of it and the rest got shoved to the back of your refrigerator, never to be seen again. But if it was an item that you used all the time, then it would have just been used up in a normal rotation. So think about that. Think about the most of the items that you make on your menu and try and simplify it. Another great idea is to substitute items. I don't know how many times I have made a recipe and it says to add like 1 teaspoon of this ingredient, this seasoning that I don't have. Well, I'm just going to substitute it. I'm not going to go out and buy it and then not use it. But I'm going to substitute something else for it. So learn items to substitute. You can do it with small quantity items like seasonings, or you can use it even for larger things. Some recipes are very specific about the type of onion that you use. There are some things that makes a difference in. But most of the time, if you're going to cook up an onion, just use whatever you got on hand. Alright, so that's number 1. Number 2 is shop your pantry first. Now, this is something that I don't really do that often now, but I used to do it in the past like all the time. And there's a reason I don't do it now. And so I want to preference this first by saying I don't think that it's a wise idea to shop your pantry first every single time you go grocery shopping, because eventually if you do this first, then you're gonna run out of stuff in your pantry. So when I say shop your pantry first, I'm saying when you create your menu for the week or the month, however often you do it, then you're going to pick items that are already in your pantry to make. Let's say you have spaghetti sauce and pasta already in there. Well, then just eat pasta that week. And that's something you can check off your list, and you don't have to buy that at the store. I used to do this all the time, and it can be very helpful in times where maybe the budget is even tighter than normal. Maybe you haven't had as much income coming in that month or recently. Then it can really help you because you're shopping what you already have first and making menu items off of that. So that means it's less that you're buying at the store. The downside to this, another reason that you could use it is maybe like you had a month pop up where all of a sudden you have some unexpected bills. This happened a while back for us a few months ago. We had some bills pop up that we were not expecting whatsoever. And so I was able to take some of our grocery money and put it towards that because I could make items from what was already in the pantry. The downside to this, and this is why I don't hardly ever do this anymore unless I absolutely have to, and that is when you shop your pantry first, obviously you're using things up more quickly and you're not always replenishing it, and that means that you don't have food in your pantry if you need it. A great example of this is during, like, back in the spring when we had a lot of the shutdown stay-at-home orders going on, and more people were just staying at their home and not going grocery shopping, and either because they just chose not to, or maybe they couldn't because they knew they had health issues and they were trying to stay away, and more people were trying to stock up on groceries then. And I learned a valuable lesson because I had always just been shopping my pantry first, that there wasn't like items left in there. And now we were having to stay home, but it meant I had to run out to the grocery first in order to stock up and have enough, food to last us a few weeks. And so I learned that being prepared is a very, very important thing, and something that we have been worked on a lot over the past 8, 9, 10 months. And I love the fact that now I have a well-prepared, well-stocked pantry that I have slowly been building, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but like the importance of that. So, but shopping your pantry first can be helpful in certain situations. All right, number 3, use meat as a complement to the meal, but not as the main dish, usually. Okay, so what I mean by this is that for us personally, most of the things that we make, most of the dishes that we make, almost all the dishes we make, have meat in them. A lot of people choose to go meatless at least a few meals out of the week, and that's great. I have a husband who loves to eat meat, and so we have it almost with every meal. But meat typically is not the main course. It's put into it. So, like, take for example, like tacos. Tacos has meat in it, but it's just one layer of your taco. There's plenty of other things to put on top. Another thing is casseroles. Casseroles are great, or like one dish meals. Like I make some rice dishes or some quinoa dishes. They have a bunch of other veggies and seasonings and stuff in it. And then I put like ground beef or shredded chicken or something like that in it. So what that does is you can take like a half pound of meat and make it stretch an entire meal for, our family of 6. I typically don't use more than about a half to 3/4 of a pound of like a ground beef in a dish, even though we have 6 people in our family, because I'm able to put that small amount in with other things, other filler items, and it just increases the quantity of it, kind of. You just don't realize that there's actually less meat in there. But if you were to have like hamburgers all the time, and you were to have like chicken breasts, then you have to have like basically 1 per person, or more than 1 per person, and that can really eat up a lot of budget, because meat is definitely one of the more expensive items. There are things, I say usually, that's why I said usually at the end. Usually don't make it the main course. There's things that we make that meat is the main course. Every once in a blue moon, I will make meatloaf because I really like meatloaf, and that uses a lot more meat up. Or even just last night, yes, it was last night, we had steak for supper, and we were able to do that, one, because we buy meat in bulk from our from farmer friends, and so we were able to keep the cost lower that way. But we had steak, and it was the main dish, and it was really good. So don't make it the main dish most of the time. Use it as a complement to the meal. That sun is like setting and it's getting really bright over here. Alright, so tip number 4. Buy bone-in meat as opposed to boneless meat. It is really convenient to go to the store and to buy chicken breasts that have already been cut up. The bone has been taken out of it, and it's just nice and pretty and sitting there ready to cook up. Or even more convenient is oftentimes the like thin strips of tenderloin chicken that are nicely packaged and are just ready to basically cook in 5 minutes. Yes, it's very convenient, but you are paying so much more to have someone else take those bones out for you. Instead, I would encourage you, especially when it comes to things like chicken, is to buy things with the bone already in it. Or not already in it, but still in it. Where someone has not taken it out for you. So that means buying a whole chicken. This is what I do. Is I buy a whole chicken. And so much cheaper. Like the cost of it can't be compared to what you would buy if you bought chicken breasts or tenderloin. You buy a whole chicken and you cook it up, and it doesn't take that long, and it's not hard. Usually I'll buy whole chickens and stick them in the freezer, and they're there until I need them. And you just cook it up and you shred it off, you take it all off the bone, and then I usually divide it up into portions and freeze what I don't need immediately, and then use part of it for that meal that day. And then I have shredded chicken already in the freezer, ready to go when I need it. So you're saving so much more. Other cheaper cuts of chicken that already have bones in them are going to be like your drumsticks and your wings and thighs. They already have bones in them, so they're typically usually like drumsticks I can find for like 99 cents a pound. Hey guys, so when Willis was editing the video, he realized that it was going to end up being a very, very long video. So we're going to go ahead and cut it off right here, and we will continue next week with the rest of the tips I have to share with you guys. And who knows, it may end up being even a 3-part. Aren't you excited? Alright, we'll see you guys later. Alright, do it again. That was right.